Yeah, so okay, so it's a very important part of I think the question. So we're really pleased to have done this. In order for us to do this in a safe way, we've teamed with the Equine Assisted Services Partnership, which Celia is chair of, and to become a member, what we've arranged with ESP is a significantly reduced rate of joining HETI, which is Human Equine Interaction Registered Hire, so HIR. And the HIR is our underpinning for this membership. It means it's had some external validation that what you say you can do, you can do. And I think that's really important because we're dealing, certainly in equine assisted services, with people who are often very vulnerable, and therefore it's not something we can take lightly. So, Celia, thank you very much for making that partnership with the ESP possible. And what I'd like Dane to do is to give Team Fucking our very first members in this category their card. They're also part of our private project, and Lisa's doing. And some of the stuff I've seen online that you've been doing has been truly amazing, absolutely amazing. So, can we present that very much?
Yeah, well, I'm torn between two roses. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Let me know. It's the ABRS is not out to make a mint out of anything. I think we've charged 25 quid to come and then that just cover our internal costs. So if you're interested in doing that and you're already an ABRS member, come and talk to me and I can set you up and put up with the ASB and all the rest of it. I think it's a really important initiative, and I'm thrilled that you're our first member. So thank you. So over to our next people. So I think we're very fortunate to have Jim from the BF and Adam Hughes from the BF with us. What they're able to do is bring to us, the top-down view of what's happening and is crucial in our sport from a governance point of view. And Jim will cover some of the stuff we're doing on equine welfare. So Jim, I'm very pleased to be able to take the time out, and I do appreciate it. And well,
Good morning. Thanks George, thank you Jane, thank you for being here. It's conscious that looking at me and I'm presenting from head office. I don't want it to be like that. And actually, very much of what I'm going to cover, you're all on top of it. You are as I said to a presentation the other day, you are the engine room of our sport. You're absolutely critical, but you're also the front window, and that's a real heavy responsibility that we've got to get right. You are the access, the gateway to the sport, and so this is really important. And actually, we've got two of the team here. This is a really interesting day for us because we're picking up what's going on out there, and also picking up what the threats and what the concerns are, and we can take those away and sort of see what we can do and how we can help. Let's hope. Which you want to go to slide? Next slide.
yeah,
Thanks, George. Okay, context. I think we all got very bruised by last year's experience, and I presented in October last year after the summer in Paris, the whole Charles du Jardin piece, and I think we were all shocked and surprised by the vitriol and the anger that was sort of put there, not for the instant, but actually kind of against, I'd say, against the whole sport, against the sector. And I think we are, because we're in the bubble, we are very sensitive to it, and we're very, we're very protective about what we do. So any threat, any external And the irritating thing as ever is that when we always want the broadsheets, we always want to see horses on the front of the newspaper. And actually the only time we got it last year was for all the wrong reasons. Society is shifting though. And we know then in lots of other sports and lots of other worlds, look at how the government is treating agriculture at the moment. You know, the population as ever moves into urbanized, it is more and more urbanized. Gen Z, social media, the whole sort of expectation and standards that people have is different from perhaps what we're used to or what we grew up with, and particularly in the sort of rural context. And we have to keep up with it. We can't say, look, they're wrong, because actually they are the majority, and actually we really need to make sure that we meet their expectations. Now, I don't think anything that we saw last summer anyone would have approved of any of that, and you could see the rationale behind it. But we've got to do everything we possibly can to build a sort of reservoir of goodwill towards our sport, so that if an incident happens, actually people do actually see all the things that we're doing, all the great bits of responsibility. It's a bit of a boring preach, but you will know all these, but these are absolutely essential, and these are also things that could take the industry down. And the reason I put safeguarding, I do think safeguarding, you know, for us, safeguarding could be about the horse as well, but safeguarding is critical. We have a responsibility to the children and the young adults, all those adults that need more support, to make sure that they have a good experience, a safe experience, one that you would expect anyway. And sadly, there are instances in our world, just as there are in others, of that sort of a grooming culture, and we've got to stamp that out. And wherever we see that, wherever we have a concern about that, we have to raise our hand. And actually, that's interesting, because we're now getting to that on the equine welfare side. What might be acceptable? What I wouldn't have ridden that horse that way. Or actually, we'll now put our hand up and say, call people out. And I think that's really important. I hope you've seen this Play Your Part on Safe to Play. It's a really good initiative. We took it from the Lawn Tennis Association and equestrianized it. It is really important. The Pony Club have embraced it. I know you. Thank you, George, for bringing it along to the ABRS. 3 years ago, the White Report on the gymnastics, and this is an interesting one. What was acceptable back in the day is not acceptable now. In the gymnastics, before COVID, they were the top of the class. They were winning awards for all their safeguarding and all the care. And actually, what they weren't seeing was the desire to win medals back in the late 90s, 2000s. They brought over the Eastern German approach to gymnastics, of training children to be able to do incredible things. That meant weighing a 6 or 7-year-old every time they turned up to the gym. That meant that they were making children, putting them into stress positions, what I call stress positions, but just to make sure that they were stretched so that they would be able to compete later on. There's a little bit of a concern, what are we doing with our horses? And we've got to make sure that we actually look at it through the prism of nowadays, because actually, when you look at what those coaches are doing to those children, and actually to be told you're overweight every week for 5 or 10 years has a compound effect on your own psychology. So we have to be able to have a fresh look at what we're doing and really ask ourselves, is this right? Anyway, that was on gymnastics, and they are doing an amazing amount of work, and it's come through some grit and determination, and actually holding up that mirror to people. And they're playing your coach and saying, no, I got it wrong, and they've got a much better relationship now. And actually, I think the standards of their coaching, the standards of what they want are much better. And actually, when you look back at what they were doing, all of them would go, yeah, I can see that's just not right. But back in the context of the 90s or the 2000s, that was acceptable. So we've got to be agile enough to make sure we're up to date. And I'm going to cover a bit more about equine welfare, which is what I've asked to do. And I know Riley's here, so he will also do that. and I'll also touch on the social value piece that we talked about. Equality, diversity and inclusion. And it was great to hear Dane's presentation. Really inspiring. You know, if the only thing I've heard is that talk, you know, it's brilliant. Dulwich and Ebony are my local riding schools. I am from the House of Cavalry, so all of that resonated enormously, and I know a little bit about dressage now. But let's look at this room. Let's call it as it is. We are a white, middle-aged, largely female audience. That's what we are, and so we've got to be mindful of that. Equality, diversity, and inclusion doesn't necessarily mean, you know, all the things. It means about just being open, being acceptable to your local community. And so the more we can do to broaden that, because as Dane said, those people that you bring in, they're not all going to be the law economists, but they might be that vet tech, or they might be that advocate. And that child in Lambeth that learned how to ride with a single mother because her husband's either in jail or been murdered, he or she will go home, and that family group around will see the positive effect of riding. And that advocacy from that family group, from the family groups of all the children that go through, is really important. That's the power of horses. And when the day comes when we're being challenged, we know we need all those voices to support, to take away that slight knowledge of fear of I don't know what those horses are, to make sure it's a thing of love. It's a really powerful tool, and you're responsible for that as well. So, as I said, it's not just about, you know, trying to get a new lossy cry. It's also about trying to broaden people into our industry. A trainer, coach, farrier, saddler, whatever. All those trades are really important to us, and they get that through the gateway, that introduction to the horse that you provide. That's what, for me, what EDI means, is trying to make sure we're as successful as possible. Environmental sustainability is the other piece. Is it a luxury that, you know, if you're a successful business, then you can do environmental sustainability because, you know, getting solar panels is expensive, but water management, etc. Yeah. Actually, I think now it's part and parcel of what we do. And I would love it to be, rather than, you know, I've heard stories that, well, your horses, so you don't really get the environment, you know. It's actually, when people see horses go, those people are the custodians of the countryside. They know. We depend on good green fields. We don't want worms around. We don't, you know, we need a really good environment. Wouldn't it be nice if people looked at us and said, those people are really helping the environment, you know? And that's something that I think we should strive to. It's another piece of making sure that we're ticking the social not ticking the social license box, but we're doing our piece with equine welfare, with inclusion, and looking after the environment. And then the workforce piece again, and you're all over this already, but there's a lot of work that we're doing with TARP by Sport England as well. In the first part is to look at the whole coaching syllabus, and Adam will cover that. But actually, we deal with workforce every day, and looking after your grooms, looking after your yard staff is actually absolutely essential, and trying to keep up with all the legislation, you know, all the pay requirements, all the salaries, pensions, is a full-time job, but it's absolutely one we've got to look after. And then actually, when we look into workforce, it's a huge subject. When you've got your officials, you've got your volunteers, then you've got the broader sector who are outside our control. But, you know, we do need to make sure that farriers and vets and all those career paths are being filled, because it damages us completely if we have, you know, if the vets are struggling. I put the other essentials, and I think this is more for you, is getting the business model right, and I know much of today is about that, whether you're a charity organisation or whether actually you are a sort of non-profit business. But it is a real challenge, and lots of headwinds out there. We talked about, you know, sort of legislation and the demand for changing employment models, but if you get it right, it's fantastic. But we are under no illusions how hard it is, and actually, I'm more than happy to absorb and hear the stories to see where we can help. You know, trying to share best practice, trying to represent you upwards through DEFRA, through DCMS, to try and get that voice heard. But I would say that with the government as it is at the moment, and you see the pressure that they've done on agriculture and the sort of the deafness that seems to be going on, it's really hard, but it doesn't mean you don't stop. And the other best way of combating that is to write to your local MP, because funnily enough, the more MPs put their hands up and try and represent their constituents, the better. That's more that has arguably that often has more power than me going through a Department of State trying to get some traction. I grew up in Lambourne, and I went to a riding school aged about 7, 8, and then went through that journey. Customer experience has changed fundamentally since back in the day, in my day. But I also know how hard it is when you're running a yard, when you're trying to keep everyone safe, and you've got a lot to go out, and you're waiting for someone else to turn up and all that. And the fact is, it goes back to making sure that you're accessible, you're a place that people want to come to, you warmly embrace the new customers, and you look after them. And actually, I'm trying to think of an analogy. Is it how you want to go to shop or Tesco's or something, that actually you'd want to feel that you're welcomed in, that you're brought in, then I will return, and that they have a good experience. So, and actually that is fundamental to any business model, is looking after your punters, they will look after you. And then the social value. Jane had that slide up, which is great. We spent 2 years going through all the data and all the sort of research pieces, and there was a lot out there about the value of equestrianism and what it brings to society, what it brings to communities. We all know that the overall value, the beta study says the overall value of equestrianism is about 9 billion to the economy. Now that's through turnovers and profits and the money that goes into feed and the money, logistics, whatever. This is different. This is about what we provide through the activity of riding, so that we're having fitter people. So we're helping challenge obesity, we're helping challenge mental health, going out, working with horses, going into green spaces, all has values on its own, which means there's less of a dependency on the NHS or the GP or whatever. And they've worked it out. It's using treasury figures and formulas. There's a sort of a great place, but I'm more than happy to go in greater detail or share stuff through George afterwards. The value of a riding school, and it's averaged out, so it's smaller, larger, bigger ones, but it's about £300,000 per annum. So that's your local community. That's not cash, that's not profit to you, but actually that's the value to your local community, to your village, to your as you present to the council or whatever. Say, look, if you lose us, this is the dent you'll put on the local infrastructure. And hopefully it's a really important tool that we can, it's a tangible tool, it's an agreed amount of money that we can, and calculation that we can then use, when you're under pressure, when you're trying to lobby for this and that, look at the sum of the whole, the value of the sport or the pastime to society. Next slide. Oh, that's really that. Your laptop at home. Okay, well, I'll let you work on that. I mean, the overall effect, though, this is all about legitimacy. This is all about remaining contemporary, going back to the social license, but it's actually making sure that we are, as a sector, is responsible. And wouldn't it be great that we're better than responsible, that actually we exceed our standards, that we are known as a good safeguarding. That really great for safeguarding, that we are the bastions of equine welfare, that actually when they go, and I think you may have seen the slide last year, but it's really trying to bring everything else. So for me, social license, and we don't really like the term, but Rolly's in the room, so we have to use it. But actually, it's all about it's about the whole picture. It's about keeping the sector legitimate. That it's not, well, they're really shit with the environment. Look what they do, whatever. Or actually, it's white, middle-aged, pale. No, they embrace everything. It's a really vibrant sector that's pulling all the stocks, and it's actually one that we want to emulate. And I think that's where we should aspire to. And actually, the horse welfare is, it probably should be central there, but it's the effort, absolutely central to everything we do.
It's my.
That's fine. Can you do next?
Ask me to sign into. This is Microsoft. Maybe something else.
Okay. You do next slide, or is that the line? You want to put it onto Exia, have it like that. Can you scroll down? Okay, I'm now just quickly going to touch on the equine welfare piece, and last year was deeply frustrating, obviously for lots of reasons, but great.
Yeah, let me ask me to sign into my.
You haven't paid your bill. But last year was really frustrating because we spent a lot of time as a federation coming up with the Charter of the Horse, which brings in the 5 domains, so, free freedoms and all that. And actually, more importantly, was a collaboration of the whole federation that came in, and then wider. And so we brought that out at the beginning of 2024, and thought, oh, well done. And then the bloody Charlotte thing popped up, which was really, really irritating, but actually gave us more license to get a grip at this. And I wouldn't say that we, as Dane said, your first lesson in the yard is how you act around the animal, and then how you look after the animal before you even get on it. You have to be able to groom it and do all do everything. The priority of everything on the Pony Club is all about equine welfare. So where did we go wrong? But there are some areas that actually, when you going back, taking a step away, that actually we could make some changes. And so over the course of last year through this year, we've been doing a lot of thinking about that and trying to bring together from across the federation better ideas and better things to keep up to date. Can you do the next slide, or is that going to be? Okay, so we set up an equine welfare steering group. I know we don't need another group, but actually this is really quite important, and it has got all our member bodies in. We split it into 3 main areas: education, and I'll come to that in a moment, the regulation task force, which is doing a lot of good work, and the communications task force, which we thought were the 3 key pillars. And you get your regulation right, and it's this is really fine-tuning stuff. But actually, you also got to make sure people are educated from the get-go. That the Charter of the Horse, the five domains, the animal is a sentient being, that actually the horse as a central piece of everything you do has now got to be put back into the training modules that we started with. So all coaching and even college work, we're trying to bring them all up to date into a standard that you would accept, but probably not there yet. Let's go to the next slide, as I'll cover. And let's expand that. Can you go into full view, or is that just dangerous as well? Okay. So actually, when we looked at it and what we do on the equine side, there is a lot that we do as a federation anyway. And I'll tell you if you can't see it. So on the left-hand side, equine science and health, and actually we have a group, the Equine Infectious Diseases Advisory Group. That's really our frontline alarm centre should something, an equine herpes, strangles or whatever, start getting a grip. That we have a network across the country through the federation to keep everyone informed. And I think you're part of that group, EIDAG. And then there's another level of that, and then there's also sort of an emergency group, and this is run by Rossdale's, proper top scientists working with the racing industry, that we can set the alarms going when it happens, and then put in the protocols.
Yeah.
All these are not
Folks might want the loo, Jeff.
Okay. So a lot of these are not notifiable diseases, so actually we're responsible for managing an outbreak, trying to control it, trying to limits its spread to the herd. Development, we have a number of groups, the Equine Welfare and Ethics Advisory Group, and they are vexing about, right, how do we make sure that the use of the whip is correct? Should we call it a whip? How about spurs? What about double bridles? What does blue tongue mean? And looking at all those things from a British point of view, because a lot of the different countries have their own views, we've got to keep up to date to make sure that we are doing the right thing. But that debate between the snapper and the double bridle, it's a real one, and it can get really hot. And we need to be able to articulate our answer. And normally the answer is, well, in the hands of the right person, either is either bad or good, and it's about saying compliance. We follow the safeguarding model. So actually, if someone is out of order with a horse, doesn't matter what discipline is, what member body they are. Hopefully, the member body can deal with it because it's a low-level infringement. But if it escalates or is reported from outside the federation, then we will take it on if necessary, and we will liaise also with BHS, with World Horse Welfare, with the RSPCA to see who's the most appropriate body to deal with it, and if necessary, we'll take it to the police. And then every member body now has an equine welfare officer, which is our point of contact, and is sort of more up to date. And we've now got a case management system using Globacol, which is the same that we use for safeguarding. That when a case is reported, it goes onto the system, everyone can see it, and then therefore a bad rider, a bad trainer, or whatever, that name will be flagged up, and you would say, well, that was low level, we got away with that. And then someone in show jump would go, well, no, his name's popped up over here as well, and we can join the dots and make sure we deal with it. And then anti-doping as well. That's at high level, that's really important. That's more for competition. But actually, the question you got, are you using the product correctly, and you're asking it to do things that it couldn't do without drugs, and there are some ethical questions. So that's really where we are. Brilliant, perfect. So I'll speed on. This is a bit more in detail, but on the communication side, we've got a really well tied up cross-federation communications group. We provide advice about crisis comms. So if you have that Charlotte du Jardin day or something, a horse gets killed on the track or wherever, we know how to manage it best, because we wouldn't want to have it do it again. We have an action plan, and we're developing that. And actually, a lot of the work we're trying to base it off the chart of the horse, so that resonates through. On the education, we're mapping all the courses. 19 member bodies, there are lots of different training syllabuses, but we're trying to map those out and make sure that they are up to date. We are dealing with, as you will cover, the coaching qualifications, which is being updated. We're looking at a really interesting Dane's piece about the judges and what they're looking for dressage. Well, is that causing the problem that is ending up with how horses are being trained? We get the judges right, and that creeping excellence that has been going there, that might be part of the problem. We get the dressage community, but it could be any other community, to work out what they really want. Then actually that will have and that will go all the way even down to the breeding of the horse. But we don't need X type of animal. Actually, this is all about harmony and athleticism. For training for judges and officials, and actually for those poor old stewards that are there at an event, and they're walking through the trailer yard and all that, and seeing some of the stuff, and they have to feel confident that they go in and say, look, that should not behave. But equally, you don't want them all of a sudden to think they're hugely empowered and go around everywhere. And so you've got to get the balance right. So that takes a lot. And then, as I said, our workforce, they all need to be trained. So it's not just the riders, it could be the parents, it could be the breeders, it's the officials, the volunteers, the big old task. And then the regulations, we're just getting a tighter grip of this. And there are a number of areas that we're looking at. And we do quite a bit already. Reporting of fatalities, unfortunately, certainly in eventing endurance. And others that you will get an overview, see what are the trends, what are the common causes, how you can mitigate those out. We're looking at the mandatory registration of horses. Now we're looking at it at the moment. It's a big old beast, but actually your horses are chipped, but there's no central equine database of such. And actually, if we had one that was working with government, then if there is a outbreak of something, you can geotag where the horses are, you can communicate to the owners. It can be a lot more dynamic, a lot safer. Looking at anti-doping a bit more, certainly on the education stuff, and then I've covered the equine welfare. So that's the work that we're doing at the moment on equine welfare, which is a lot. We have eminent people like Rowley involved in it, and so I think we're on the right track. But I think the so what for you guys is, as I said at the beginning, you are the shop window. You need to lead with this, and I think the expectations of the public, our standards are rising if they needed to, and I think it's the right thing. So yeah, but I'm here for questions later on, but I'm going to hand it over to Adam. Hopefully, if the slides work.
Can I just add one thing?
Yeah.
Locally, we all know George leads on these things. Sitting next door to Anne is Ben, who is our equine welfare officer, and obviously a leading that as well. So we're very pleased to welcome Ben to the trustees as well, to strengthen the work that George has been leading as well.
The organisation are really on it, possibly spurred by the Jardin incident, and I get bombarded with emails with these tables on it on a daily basis. I did manage to make my first meeting this week, which is the third meeting, and then you've got an open day for it all to go up next month, which I'll get to reply to. And we're part of, obviously, we're as grassroots organisations, we are there, the public are coming in. We're primarily dealing with the public who don't know much about horses. The key there is also watch out for the disgruntled one. My experience in life in veterinary practice, it's always the disgruntled one, what wants revenge, what refers to me. So just be wary of that. And if you get a funny smell or feeling about a particular client and so on, act on your instincts, to my top here. So we have this network, British Equestrian is setting up this network for the industry to try and help us. Because often we've got to deal with the situation before the horse is bolted.
Thank you, Mayor.
So George has given me the 2-minute warning already, so I'm going to try and go through this as quickly as possible, but I think it's really important to cover. When I started in my role 3.5 years ago, I got given the easy task of getting all the member bodies to work together and to try and simplify the coaching pathway throughout the industry. We're nearly getting there. So George, can you go on the next slide, please? So through the coaching development action team, which has a representative from each of the member bodies that deliver a coaching qualification, we've been trying to simplify CPD. We're trying to work together to make it as easy as possible for coaches. So to try and stop that, the arguments at member body level, and actually think about the people that have been impacted through it. So the big thing that went in our favour is the first sport qualifications, which the ABRS qualification is on. There's a review underway at the minute. What we are looking to do is move away from every member body having an individual qualification to go into a core certificate in equestrian coaching or equestrian coaching certificate. Terminology still be to determine. But what that means is that at level 1, 2, and 3, anyone going onto those coaching courses will get the same modules, will go through the same things. The additional bit that we're working on, which the framework will work together on, is then each discipline will have a technical certificate that will sit above that, but it'll all be in the same framework. So if you wanted to move from ABRS into show jumping, the only thing you need to do would be the show jumping technical certificate on top of the core equestrian coaching certificate as well, which is a new direction for the qualifications. Personally, I think it's a real massive step forward. It wasn't my decision. It's been a decision across the member bodies that are part of that. We had involved, and this was the this was the decision that we took collectively. There's a hard deadline. The new coaching qualifications need to be live by the 1st of July next year. So we've got a lot of work to get there. But one of the core parts of the new qualification is embedding ethical training into the qualifications. So touching on the equine welfare steering groups and especially the education group, we're seeking advice from industry experts to make sure that there are ethical training built into there. So as soon as you've got your coaching qualification, it is a core part of what you're learning. So it's not a case of a CPD further down the line. But anyone who has qualified previously, it will be available as a standalone CPD as well. So we can help upskill the industry around that. I've covered that bit, so George, I'm trying to fly through as quick as I can to keep us on time. This is just a list of the member bodies that are involved and at what levels they will be involved. Obviously, it doesn't include the BHS, but there are conversations with BHS so we can understand and recognise prior learning. But the other positive with the framework that we'll have moving forward is that if any of the other disciplines or volunteer-led member bodies want to become part of the regulated qualifications, it becomes easier because there's a framework, there's a footprint for them to then follow, to be part of. The really good addition is the RDA have come on board for level 1, which really helps us add in potentially some an element of disability in there as well. And then I've got a completely separate one. Anyone, as Jim mentioned before around business models, if anyone is a non-for-profit or a charity in your centre, we have got 2 drop-in sessions just on the Sporting and Movement Fund, which is up to £15,000 for projects. That can be participation projects, but again, another one of the core areas is environment sustainability. So Jemima Morris will be running those drop-in sessions. If you scan the QR code, it just takes you through to a simple Microsoft form, and you'll just be able to sign up for those sessions there. So they're the 3rd and the 6th of November. We try to avoid half term. That is a Monday and a Thursday. We try to just split them in the week. That's it from me, George.
That was superb. On the coaching side, Jane leads on the coaching, but what I can say is that we're one of the largest suppliers of coaches within the industry, and we want to continue to do so. We're looking to have a technical certificate, obviously, in general riding. We're also trying to work with Celia and see if we can get a technical certificate covering equestrian assisted learning. So there might be a technical certificate we can do with that, and I think that would be hugely way of upskilling people who are involved in EAS. Do you want to say any more on that?
Yeah, because we've talked quite a lot about this, because obviously you can see we do L1 and 2. We're looking to introduce an L3 in the next 12 months. That's a 12-month course. So that's a serious development as well, and it's taking time to get it off the ground, but we will. And then when we thought about this general riding is the name that's given to it, we thought, yes, that's right for us, but we need something that's going to be a technical certificate which is relevant to what we do and you do. So that's where we came up with the idea that we could have our technical certificate would be equine assisted services. So that would mean your coaches would have training, particularly in how to deliver those kind of services for the clients that you get, both with children and adults, give you a series of techniques that would really help improve what you can do for people with specialist needs. Just touching on that, once you get to a certain level, you've got to have a medical practitioner of some sort involved, but we're working at the level below to give you those capabilities. Because if you think about social value, helping people who are in that category has huge social value. So if you can get them back into education and training and development, they themselves can lead far more fulfilling lives as individuals. And that's the bit we're really interested in, as well as people who come, because it's an absolute joy to ride a horse. In terms of how we do it, we've got Sue, who runs is our training manager at the DIC. we have trained, and it is huge. We have run 10 courses on L1, level 1 and level 2 for some years now. And that means when they're full, we're putting 60 trained coaches into the community every year. Sue's going for broke this year. She thinks we can do 13. And we want to harness that because our friends at the BEF have just announced coaching bursaries. And if you get a coaching bursary, it halves the cost. So we thought we'd put some more courses on, take advantage of the coaching bursary, which means people can afford the training because it halves the cost, particularly for the young people under 25, you know, who're trying to get established and they want to rent homes, buy homes, perhaps have first babies. These costs are huge, but it will halve it because the coaching bursary does that. So we're trying quickly to capitalise on all that. So that's where we are on CIEC.
Okay.
And you can see I've got some great passion for it. So I want to make it all happen. If you've got any questions, this is my last one. I'm there. We have, put your hands there. Where are you? Julie and Paula. Are they, yeah? There they are there. Those two ladies have been running CIEC. I won't tell you for how long, but their centres are real foundations in our footprint. So any questions about what it's like to do that at the ground level, talk with Julie and Paula.
Right, I need you to sit down by 1:15. So Charles is going to get a coffee break and have a wait.